Hello and thanks for joining us here at Christian Voice New Zealand as we take another look at today's culture through the lens of the Bible. Hello, I'm Mike Bain. Recently I started a project to revitalise an online news site called the Daily Examiner. It was founded by a dedicated group. Now, their goal was to offer independent news free from state influence. Well, there it was, providing commentary and stories on many alternate viewpoints during the COVID-19 period. As I mentioned, it was well-intentioned and at its height provided an alternative narrative to mainstream sources and allowed New Zealanders an opportunity to hear a different voice. Now, there are two reasons I mentioned this project. The first is to encourage you to take some time and have a look at it as an alternative news site. The news site publishes both global and local stories on topics often overlooked by mainstream media. The stories published are in line with what we do here at Christian Voice New Zealand, where we aim to be balanced, factual, well-researched and truthful. So does the Daily Examiner. Okay, that was the first point. The second reason stems from an opinion piece as me, the editor, published, written by Rodney Hyde. Now, for those who have no idea who Rodney Hyde is, he once was the leader of the ACT Party, a member of Parliament for the Epsom electorate. These days he writes a blog and he hosts a program on Reality Check Radio. And I must admit, he paid for coffee for me one day. Well, it was a long time ago. But it was a paragraph in his opinion piece that got me thinking about us, you and me. Let me share with you what Rodney wrote. What we are witnessing has been decades in the making. We've allowed family, church and other civilizing institutions to be stripped away. The only justifiable collective now is the state. There is the individual and the state. There is nothing now mediating between the two. And now even our own individuality, our very concept of who we are, is being stripped away. Now, this paragraph resonated with me for two reasons. One, Rodney is echoing what we've said here at Christian Voice and what we've been warning you about for years. And two, it's the truth. Rodney hit the nail bang on the head, dead centre bullseye. Rodney is correct. We are witnessing something that has been happening for decades. You know, we go, oh, really? When we see statistics appear in our mainstream media showing the decline, the changes, the subtle shifts in our culture, our government, and you know what? We stand back, we shrug our shoulders and we move on. But when it affects us, when these changes, these differences start to bite us, we start to pay attention. But we ask, how? What? When did this happen? Why didn't I know? Well, look, you probably did. Rodney wrote, now, even our own individuality, our very concept of who we are, is being stripped away. I guess if you weren't awake earlier, I reckon you are now. So pay attention. I agree. We're at that point, maybe further down the road than Rodney thinks, but who are we? Who are we as a nation, as individuals? Are we individual in our thinking, or have we allowed group thinking to take over? What exactly is it that sways our minds, our attitudes, our integrity, our morals, and being to that way of thought? It's because, simply put, we're no longer participants in this world. We've become spectators, bystanders, happy to be informed, being manipulated into what those who are in control of what they want. Now, it may sound like a conspiracy, and maybe you're right. But there are reasons why we've become this way. I was listening to a political risk specialist earlier this year who suggested that the Western world is in a state of appeasement to everybody, just as the German people were in the early 1930s when Adolf Hitler was making headway on the scene. Many members of the German people, he said, were listening. They were watching, but they were being deceived, not knowing what was really happening, just happy to watch, have their ears tickled without thinking of the consequences. Then even before the Nazis took power, the German people were mere spectators. They just watched and they accepted. Many today ask, why did they allow what happened to happen? Well, let me tell you, it was because they'd lost their identity. They'd allowed themselves to be subjected to groupthink, to the machinations of a charismatic leader. In New Zealand, we've observed how susceptible people can be to the influence of charismatic leaders. We've experienced this firsthand with a young, personable leader who captured public admiration and became wildly popular, often sought after for, believe it or not, selfies. But the world is, well, it's still enamoured with her, but New Zealanders are finally waking up and asking the same questions. How, when, what, and why did we allow what happened in our country to happen? It was because we too lost our identity as to who we are here in New Zealand, and it's something that is still lost. I'm sure we could talk for hours on this matter, but I want to conclude this because our time constraints, and just mention one example of what has diminished but should never have been allowed to. And that is our belief in a higher authority, and that is our belief in God. If we're talking about identity, then what is most important to each and every one of us, especially if we're followers of Jesus, and have a belief in the Bible and accept it as the absolute truth, then our identity in Christ is all that should matter. Those who are believers know when we talk about manipulation, it's not a conspiracy, because we know and accept that these are the last days. These are the days that the Bible speaks about. These are the days that this guy and others like him, even before us, have been banging on for years about. And yet no one's listening. They're spectators being fed regularly that their individual thinking should be state-controlled, just like it was in pre-war Germany. Hey, let me finish this with another excerpt from Rodney Hyde's article. He said, there's no immediate fix. The shift has been surreptitious. Politicians are unaware, and teachers themselves are indoctrinated to the now status quo. But some understanding of the problem of what is wrong is the start of the defence. You know, if you want to understand why all this is happening, have a chat to your church friend or maybe that God botherer fella at work over a cup of coffee. Hey, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, leave your comments as always, and above all, have a great week. But until next time, may you receive the blessing of God in your life.